We've talked so much on this program about the rising tensions between Iran and the West. The president's national security advisor is just back from Israel. It's believed that Tom Donilon asked Israel not to attack suspected Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, meantime, officials in the U.S. are trying to strengthen ties between police and intelligence agencies. Senior correspondent John Miller says they see a growing possibility of an attack by Iran on American soil, hence the circling of the wagons, essentially, John.
That's right, Erica. And the U.S. is working overtime now across 16 intelligence agencies to identify, monitor, and disrupt the activities of Iranian agents and surrogate groups like Hezbollah. They're talking about this for two reasons. One, an uptick of surveillance of U.S. targets overseas by suspected Iranian agents. And two, a rash of coordinated plots against Israeli targets last week in 4 countries. CBS News has learned that U.S. intelligence officials have observed suspected Iranian agents conducting surveillance on U.S. government buildings more than a dozen times in the last year, in Europe, South America, as well as suspected probes in Bahrain, headquarters to the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet. Today, Ralph Bolter, the FBI's top counterterrorism official, has summoned the heads of 56 field offices to a classified 90-minute video conference to underscore that the Bureau remains concerned Iran would consider attacks in the United States. Already at the National Counterterrorism Center, analysts are carefully studying a rash of recent attacks against Israeli targets in India, Georgia, and Bangkok. And they expect to see more.
That's the fear. The fear is that would be the type of attack we'd see increasing in frequency and seriousness as leading up to a conflict.
Tom Petro is the former director of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS. Could you see them striking on U.S. soil?
Yes, I could see them striking on U.S. soil.
And would that be Iranian agents, or would that be a surrogate group?
I think it would be potentially a combination of both. I think they know psychologically the impact that an attack on U.S. soil would have.
In fact, last October, the FBI charged this suspected Iranian agent with plotting to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington, D.C. And since 9/11, at least 3 suspected Iranian reconnaissance operations against targets, including the New York City subway system, have been disrupted by police and the FBI. Tom Petro, the former NCIS director, was a key leader of a task force set up to target Iraq's intelligence operation, but he says Iran is an even bigger challenge.
Quite frankly, we don't have as much intelligence about their networks as we would have had against the Iraqis. I would say that the urgency, because of that type of warfare, that unconventional warfare, which I think everyone would agree is clearly part of Iran's kind of battle plan, it's much more important to aggressively disrupt those activities.
Why wouldn't they be worried that some kind of attack like this would provoke the very thing they don't want to see, which is an attack against Iran and its oil fields, and its nuclear facilities?
I think the U.S. intelligence take on this is that an attack against the U.S. would come after an Israeli attack as part of the retribution for support. But I think the other thing that General Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, said when he testified before the intelligence committees was Iran's calculus about whether to do that may be based on how much heat they're already feeling in the economic sanctions that came after the plot on the Saudi ambassador in Washington.
And they believe that that was directly connected to that plot, to the Iranian government, not some offshoot group of some group that was not a direct part of the government.
They do, Charlie, and they didn't believe it all at once. When that case came in, they looked at it with a great deal of skepticism, but when they looked at the prime operator, who was the go-between with the Mexican drug cartel, and found that he had direct connections to members of the Quds forces, which is really Iran's intelligence and special forces field team, it became clear to them that the story was as it appeared.
If we were to get to this point, who is the person in Iran who would make that call? Is it the Ayatollah Khomeini, or would it be Ahmadinejad?
Well, it would be the supreme leader, who most intelligence analysts agree controls the Quds forces, but it's It's interesting because that classified FBI meeting across the 56 field offices directed by headquarters today examines the other end of that question, which is whoever makes that call, who would receive that call here? And have they doubled down on all their sources? Have they checked all of their old cases in terms of Iranian intelligence agents, Hezbollah cases, fundraising cases? Have they really beaten the bushes to make sure that they are focused on this, not just in New York and Washington and LA, but across the country?
When you say receive the call, you mean the agents on this end who receive the call, obviously not, yeah.
That's right.
Just clarifying. Okay.
And the purpose of this conference is to make sure that everybody appreciates the urgency and touches all the bases and all the agencies are connected.
That's exactly right. I've been in those conferences before, and they really go around the 56 field offices and say, how many cases do you have against Iran, human sources, wires? Are you tapping all of that? Are you feeding us the information back here so we have the big picture and stay on it? And
it's not just in the United States, it's in Latin America and other places, American embassies, that they might attack as well.
That's right. And frankly, many believe that's the more likely scenario, which is to attack U.S. targets overseas. And we've seen models of that going back to 92 and 94. Where they attacked Israeli targets and Jewish targets in places where it wasn't expected, like South America.
John Miller, thanks as always.
Thanks, everyone.